We're going to move to another issue which has already prompted a lot of debate. A disagreement has emerged between the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach about whether the next government should consider a referendum on the sensitive right to die issue. Now, the issue, of course, was most famously brought to the fore in the landmark Supreme Court case taken by MS sufferer Mary Fleming back in 2013. She lost that case and later died in the arms of her partner, Tom Curran. Now, Michael Nugent, he's the co-founder of Right to Die Ireland with Tom Curran. He's the chairperson of Atheist Ireland as well. He's joining me now in studio. Michael, thanks so much for joining us on Newstalk Lunchtime. Having yourself been personally affected by this issue, what are your thoughts on seeing the Taoiseach and Taoiseach of the country basically having it out almost in the media on such a sensitive issue?
Well, I don't think they are really. I don't think there's much of a difference between what they're saying. I mean, the Taoiseach is saying that he doesn't want to discuss it, and Joan Burton is saying that she wants to discuss it. But not only are they not doing anything about it, they're not even expressing an opinion as to what they think should be done about it. And it's essentially an abdication of responsibility. The Taoiseach says that it's constitutionally impossible. The Supreme Court in Mary Fleming's case said that it is constitutionally possible, that it's up to the Oireachtas to balance the competing constitutional rights, and then it's up to the court to determine whether they got the right balance. There's already a bill before the Oireachtas from John Halligan that would enable the government to actually discuss it in Parliament now if they wanted to, rather than, as seems to be constantly being one report or one expert group away from taking a decision.
Do you think it's because, as we already know, the 8th Amendment is going to be a constitutional issue which will be debated in the first few months of the next Dáil term? We see that there's a huge, very, very intense debate on that already. And even just on going back to the last item, the issue of divestment of schools is another social issue which is going to prompt huge debate. If there was to be a debate about the right to life and assisted suicide, do you think it would have the right attention, the right measured debate, given those two issues will also be going on at the same time? Would it even get enough attention to have a proper debate about all the issues associated with it?
Well, I mean, they can do them in sequence. They don't have to do them all on the same day. But the people are already aware of this issue. Everybody in the country knows somebody who has died after suffering unnecessarily. Also, what a lot of the opponents of this don't seem to realise is that it's not merely about dying. It's about the peace of mind and quality of life that you have while you're still alive, by knowing that you have the option to end unnecessary suffering if you have to. So it's actually an issue of quality of life as opposed to an issue of just about dying. Do
you think the public in Ireland, the greater Irish public, has the appetite to see a change in the issue of right to life and assisted suicide?
Well, consistent polls show that a large majority of Irish people agree both that people who don't want to die should have the palliative care and the resources to ensure that they can live as long as they want to, and that those who are rational, who are terminally ill and who do want to die in a way of their choosing should have the right to do so.
So then, if you say the public is willing to have that debate, the political parties don't seem to be wanting to do it. You mentioned John Halligan backed the bill. Do you think political parties are treating this issue as seriously as it needs to be treated? Are they taking stands on it one way or the other?
No, well, neither the Taoiseach nor the Taoiseach have even expressed their opinion as to whether the right to assisted dying should be granted. And the Supreme Court has said that it's up to the Oireachtas to do it. This hiding behind the Constitution, which is something that they seem to be doing. They did it in education as well, saying that they're constitutionally obliged to buttress religious discrimination in education. And they do this on the basis of unpublished legal opinions, which in effect abdicates the responsibility of the Oireachtas to balance the competing rights, and the courts then determine whether they've got it right or not. And there are people who are dying, who will avail of assisted dying. And as you say, having been through it myself with my late wife, when people are in that position, the law isn't what determines what we will do. When you're dying, your own conscience and ethics will take precedence, and the politicians essentially have to catch up with reality.
And Michael, just to talk about your own case for people who don't know it, just the very fact of it, this is something even people who are on the other side of it, they might not understand why it would come to such a decision. How did that, you and your late wife, come to that, talking about that decision?
Well, we had talked about it a lot hypothetically over the years, but Anne unfortunately was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was given 6 months to live. As it happened, she lived for a year and a half. Now, Anne wasn't afraid of dying, but she didn't want to undergo unnecessary suffering. And so we took the decision to prepare for Anne to be able to take her own life if she needed, and I was going to help her if she needed to do that. Now, from the moment that we took that decision, Anne's quality of life soared for the last 18 months of her life, and she was able to live as much as she could for her final year while having the peace of mind of knowing that she wasn't going to have to undergo unnecessary suffering. Now, in the end, Anne died naturally, and that's something that again, I think a lot of people aren't aware of, that most people who make these preparations actually die naturally, because it's not that they want to die, it's that they want the peace of mind of avoiding unnecessary suffering.
There is the debate, if this ever does arise as a main topic of debate in the Dáil or otherwise, people who are against it will make the point that it's almost putting people in harm's way of prosecution by assisting in a suicide. I mean, what's your own answer to that? What would you say to people, and there are many of them, who would say that?
Well, at the moment, there's a potential 14-year sentence for assisting somebody to die. But what is the case, certainly in the case of myself and Anne, and also typically in other cases that I'm aware of, the loved one who is going to help the dying person to die isn't concerned about those consequences, because I loved Anne and I would have done whatever was necessary to prevent her from undergoing suffering. Typically, it's the dying person that's concerned about the consequences for their loved one. They don't want to think that their loved one will end up in jail for helping them to die. So what this law does is it puts more pressure on the dying person, more so than on the loved ones who are going to help them. We've already legalised suicide, and we realised when all the same arguments could be applied to that, we realised that legalising suicide was the compassionate, ethical thing to do, taking everything into consideration, and it's the same with assisted dying. OK, Michael Nugent, co-founder of Right to Die Ireland, thanks so much for joining us in Newstalk Lunchtime to talk about this very, very sensitive issue.